Hello, friends. Today, I will have a quick rant video about this video I saw from a YouTube called The Heroic Ideal. Now, this channel is all about the revival of paganism and puts a lot of interesting stuff, a lot of interesting ideas out there about paganism and how it relates to politics and like civilizational crisis. But I made this video about the root of the West's political crisis in the modern world being that of particularism versus globalism, and that is apparently, or versus universalism, I should say, and that is the root of the political crisis in the West. And to be honest, that's the most absurd thing that I've ever heard. And I think that this is part of a wider thing you see with these pagan people and just kind of like broadly kind of conservative people, which is they want to be on the losing side. Like one side is progressing, you're conserving. That means you lose. And with these pagans, if you're saying that being pagan is being a particularist and that not being pagan is being a universalist, then you lose because, I mean, what wins? The divided, the house divided, or the house united? And I don't know. I didn't watch the full video because I've seen this a few times and it's just so ridiculous. What do these people think that paganism is? Like in Lithuanian, the storm god is Perkūnas. And in the ancient Hittite language, their storm god, their king, their warrior god, god of order, is something very similar to Perkūnas. And in Greece, it's called Zeus. Okay. And in Danish and in the Nordic culture, there's Odin and Thor. And the same pantheon of gods exists in every single place from the from Europe to down to the Middle East, down to Iran. And by the way, where did monotheism come from? Zoroastrianism, which is in of itself an extension on this Indo-European, Aryan, like Yamnaya uh, empire, which spread its universal religion to India. And by the way, what are the Vedas about? They're about the same thing. Why is there a caste system in India? It's because there was one all-encompassing universalist way of viewing the world, and it existed all the way from India and probably further all the way to Ireland. And it was a giant religion. And the specific gods, the specific local gods, and even the idea of there being this one chariot, thunder, war god, and then there being all the other gods, how they are, that was in itself a universal principle. And it's not supposed to be a particular principle. So if you're saying that, oh, the great problem that we have is that we should be more particularist, well, where does your paganism come from? It comes from your universalist ancestors who won and they took over and they wrote history and they spread their God everywhere and they spread this sort of metaphysical truth all across the world, such that even though we have slave morality, it is ingrained into the bedrock of how people think about things. And this person's channel is called The Heroic Ideal. So you would think that, he would stop and think for a second. Well, how can we all have a heroic ideal if we're all particularists? Because the heroic ideal does not just exist in some parts of Europe or all of Europe. The heroic ideal exists everywhere where the, Indo-European, Aryan, Yamnaya, everywhere that they were, has the heroic ideal. So, what does this person think that is? That is universalism. Everyone universally believes in the same overarching God, and there are local characteristics. By the way, in Christianity, people often forget Catholicism, which is the largest branch of Christianity, there are saints for everything. People are sainted, like local ethnic figures are sainted, which and local religious customs are taken into Catholicism, thus making Catholicism practice locally uh, in ways that are unique to the people, different from the overall universalist structure. The problem was never universalism. The problem was slave morality. And one of the great things about Nietzsche is that he does have a overarching universalist morality, and that morality is the heroic ideal. That morality is the will to power, to be great, and that we all have an obligation to come together to create the greater man, to create the greater society, and to fulfill our manifest destiny in the stars, to overcome, to conquer, to become. That is the destiny of humanity. That is our heroic ideal, okay, to be heroes. And that is something which can be practiced universally. And when that ideal is practiced universally, all of your particular concerns are taken care of by this universalist ideal. Because if you have a problem with, well, of course, mass migration, things like this, then if society is to be great, then we don't make things worse because we're trying to make things great. But if we have a slave morality where we believe in being slaves and loving each other, then you don't really have a problem making things worse. Because the core problem is really the making of things worse. It's the anti-life aspects, the global Malthusian antinatalist movement. This is like what is evil in the world. And a universalist value, a universalist religion is needed to combat this, not a particularist religion. A particular religion is needed in a particular area, but quite frankly, I think the pagans really underestimate what the local gods are important, of course. No one's saying they aren't, but pagans really underestimate to the extent of which saints do act as local gods. And they latch onto this idea of particularism when what they're really grasping for, as is admitted in the channel name, is the heroic ideal, which is this universalist pro-life concept that takes under its banner all of the local gods. Like there's Perkunas, then there's Odin, and there's Thor, and there's Zeus, okay? But they're all the same, okay? There's like Krishna. They're all the same. Um so yeah, and I think that is so damaging to do when you define yourself as a particularist. In the dialectic, the universalist will win. Oh, hey, I'm a universalist. We all believe in the same thing. Oh, I'm a particularist. We all sort of believe in different things, but we're kind of a federation. Okay, I think the universalist won because they're centralized and they can marshal resources at the most important strategic points in the battlefield, and they'll win. And your army, all subdivided into 20 different clans, is not going to go so well. That's why the Roman army conquered the world, right? Common sense. And yeah, don't put yourself in a dialectic, because I like pagan people, and I do believe that like you have a god like of your people, and that you have a local god, and I do think about, like, I'm like Lithuanian, so I do think about Perkūnas, But um I'm not going to be here putting myself in a dialectic where fundamentally I believe in pro-life. Okay, I'm always going to believe in like my sort of ancestral God. That's just sort of, I think everybody does. Everybody sort of believes that you have a sort of spirit to your people, to your family, and that you sort of think about that. That's just a very natural thing, unless you're like a rational humanist atheist, which a lot of people are, admittedly. But if you're in any way spiritual, then you will always think that. But it's really about the pro-life ideal. And it is the heroic ideal. It is this universalist pro-life ideal, and this is what Zarathustra is, that wins the day. In the same way that a universalist anti-life wins the day versus uh, versus a divided particularist pro-life movement. And yeah, I guess that's it. It frustrates me though because it's like libertarianism, like it, because I really do believe there is a problem. Like, no one's having children. Society is sort of collapsing, and in our lifetimes it will be very noticeable because just the demographics are such that everybody is gonna age out at the same time, and it's gonna be disaster unless robots replace everybody. But I don't really think they can. So I mean, it already is sort of a disaster, but it's going to be like an ongoing, much worse disaster. And if you are here saying, "Hey, I believe in conserving, and these other people believe in progressing. I believe in particularism while they believe in universalism," then what you've done there is you've just gone onto the battlefield and you've picked a hill and you see the enemy and they're sort of camped on the hill, and you've gone and you've camped right below them on the hill, okay? So, you have this tremendous disadvantage that you're below them on the hill, so they can like fire down upon you and you're sort of stuck all clumped up on the bottom. No, like common sense, guys, you pick the top of the hill. And that's what your pagan ancestors also did, and to the extent that the pagans did lose, it was because of their particularism. That is why people are not pagan. It was because of the particularism. That was the root of the problem. No one has a problem with universalism. People love universalism. You'd love to have things in common with all of humanity. And that's a very important idea, I think, to have a universalist connection to all of humanity. That's like a really important thing. And to say, "Oh, I'm particularist," it's like you're a Luddite. Okay? It's like, why? Why would you do that to yourself? Like, you're going to just be subsumed. And like do you even want that? Like, I thought that I thought that we want the heroic ideal. I thought we want the will to power. So no, apparently not. We want particularism. So there's the rant.